I'd like you to tell us a few words about the latest novel published in Romanian language called Earth, which is the 7th novel in the Shetland series. What can the readers find there?
They find out a little bit more about Jimmy Perez and his relationship with his new boss, Willow Reeves. It starts with a landslide, and that was a real event in Shetland. It happened lots of years ago now, but I can remember going and visiting. And the one main road between the airport and the main town, Lerwick, was closed for quite a long time because it had rained and rained and rained. And there was this huge landslide that cut the road in half and just missed a couple of croft houses. So, of course, I'm a crime writer. So I thought, what would happen if it carried on? And then maybe there was a body in the croft that had been overwhelmed by the landslide.
Mm-hmm. Are there many actual events that you are putting in the books?
Not so many, I think. But they trigger. Sometimes they'll trigger a book. So a snippet of conversation that I overhear, or a little newspaper headline that doesn't mean an awful lot to somebody else. It can just set a story off, I think. But I try and keep real life out of my books as much as possible, because that makes you responsible. If you're using fact, then you have to get the facts right. And facts are quite hard and unforgiving things, I think.
So fiction is easier?
Oh, fiction is much easier. Yeah, if you tell the stories, then you're the god in your own universe. You're in charge, I think, and you can do what you like. So I've struggled. I've just finished a new book about whether to put COVID in it or not. And that was quite tricky, because if you put it in, really, you have to get the details right. And we've been in and out of lockdown so many times, and the rules are different depending on where you live, that I would be bound to get something wrong. And anyway, it would be quite distracting, I think, for the reader, about people putting their masks on and whether they're meeting outside or in a group of 6 or in a group of 30, whatever the latest rules are. So in the end, I decided to just not put any date on the story at all. And I don't mention COVID.
Mm-hmm. Well, talking about fiction and reality, when or what was your inspiration for becoming a crime writer?
I thought I was going to write a great work of literature when I started. I had very, very grand ambitions. But while I think I'm quite good about creating character. I enjoy writing character. I'm very curious about people, so I love writing character. I've always been quite bad about plotting. So I'd created this group of quite interesting people, but you can't just have interesting people sitting in a room and talking. Something has got to happen. And I couldn't decide what should happen. But once I killed one of them off, I was away, it was fine. The story was there for me. And I write quite traditional crime fiction, so of the golden age type crime fiction. So the format there is quite structured. You have a murder, you have a limited number of suspects, and you have some form of resolution. And of course, you can subvert the rules and play with them. But you still have that structure to hold you up. A crime writer I know said it's a bit like having a corset to keep you straight. That's how I see it.
This is the genre, yeah.
Yeah, this is the genre. So I don't have to worry too much about the plot. I mean, obviously there are details and you have to have red herrings, and you really want there to be that cheap thrill of the surprise ending. You want all that, but the structure is there for me to work within. And I can do the things that I was hoping to do writing a grand work of literature, look at families and what holds them together and what makes them fall apart, and look at the individual within the community, and issues of social justice and
Yeah.
all that I can do within the crime novel, but I don't have to worry about the plot.
Well, the plots are extremely interesting in all the novels I've read, so you're a little, I'd say, too timid, too shy on this.
No, but I think I can do it because the structure is there holding me up. I know where I'm going. I know that there's a police investigation. I know that there's some form of resolution at the end. And I think that's why crime fiction is so popular, especially at this time of chaos in the world. You know, we had chaos in America, and we had Brexit, and which I didn't want. And we had COVID, and there's all this confusion, and none of us know quite where we're going to end up. So reading crime fiction where there is a resolution, some form of reconciliation at the end, is so reassuring, I think, for
it's restoring the order.
Yeah, absolutely. Restoring the order, justice being done. And I think that's why readers are turning big style to crime fiction now.
Yeah, you're probably right. Probably because your writing is traditional, and probably because the setting is in Shetland, which is a rather close space. You are often compared with Agatha Christie. They say that you are the new Agatha Christie and so on. What do you think about this comparison?
Well, I'm not a huge fan of Agatha Christie because I think she's very cold and very ruthless. She wrote serial killers before other people did. She kills school children without a blink, and I would struggle to do that. I'm, I think, less concerned with the plot than she is. She does wonderfully twisty plots, and I am perhaps more concerned about why people do things, why murder is committed, and then looking at the aftermath of the murder, what effect that has on the people around the victim and the other people involved in the case. But it's a great honor to be considered in those lines, because she wrote such pacey stories. We all wanted to read them. We all wanted to know what was going on.
Yeah, that's right. But I also think that your books are more interested in the psychology of the characters and the relationship between them, and more than the twisted plot and so on.
I think so.
And one of the characters that I personally like very much, and of course the Romanian readers, because you have a lot of fans here, and there are almost about 8 or 9 books translated by us in Romania, so you have a consistent readership here. One of the most important characters is Jimmy Perez, and he's a fascinating character, and I wanted to know where the inspiration for Jimmy came from. How did you create it?
I think the first book in the series is called Raven Black, and that was going to be a standalone novel. My editor had said that it would stretch credibility too far to write more than one book set in such a small setting, an island group with such a small population. So I wanted, the book is about what it is to be an outsider, how we all feel in some kind of way that we don't quite belong, or we fight to belong. And so I wanted a character who belonged but also didn't quite belong. So I make him a Fair Islander, and Fair Isle is the most remote of the most remote inhabited island in the UK. It's halfway between Orkney and Shetland. It's very small. It's only 3.5 miles long and 1.5 miles wide. Population of about 50. And I know it very well because I spent a couple of years living there and still have friends there after 40 years. So I made him from Fair Isle. Most Shetlanders have never been to Fair Isle. They don't understand the island. And Fair Isle kids, when they reach the age of 11, have to leave and go out and stay in Lerwick, the main town in Shetland, to go to school. So again, that breeds a different kind of person. They leave their families behind, and they have to be quite strong and quite independent. So there's that as well. And then Jimmy went south to Aberdeen, and he got married and got divorced, and now he's back in the islands. And so that's what he is. He's an outsider. He's a Shetlander, and he has this strange Spanish name, Jimmy Perez, which comes because there was on Fair Isle a Spanish Armada shipwrecked called El Gran Grifon, and divers still go and dive there. But there were about 60 survivors, according to the records, who struggled ashore, climbed up the main mast that tilted onto the rocks. And it's not outside the bounds of possibility that one of those married a local woman and that the name survives after this time. And he looks Mediterranean. He's got dark hair and dark skin. He looks like a Romanian.
You're not a huge fan of Agatha Christie, but I'm sure you like very many authors that probably inspired you also, crime authors, I mean, or maybe even literary fiction authors. Can you name some of them that inspired you or you like reading?
Yeah, I suppose if we're going back to what inspired me, I loved the Maigret books by Georges Simenon.
Yeah.
I've always liked books in translation because you get a sense of somewhere else as well as a sense of the crime. But I think Simenon is a master writer. And I would say that any new writer, whether they write crime or not, should read him, because his language is so spare and so tight. And every word matters, every word does something. Within one sentence, he can set a scene, describe a character, and move the plot on. He's just so skillful, and he was so prolific that there are lots and lots of books to read. And I think I like the character of Maigret. I think once said that his role is not to judge but to understand. And I've met Simenon's son, who said that Simenon saw Maigret as a kind of priest, and he wanted people to confess to him. He didn't necessarily want the flashy chase or the denouement. He just wanted to make people to feel that they could confess to him.
And other writers, probably maybe modern one?
Yeah, I suppose I moved on from the golden age to a new golden age that we had in the UK. So people like P.D. James, Phyllis James, and Ruth Rendell, who were writing in the 70s and 80s. And I think who moved the genre on and made it more literary in a sense, and made it more respectable. Suddenly, reviewers had to take a bit of notice because these women could really write. And they tackled more complex subjects. But they still, certainly P.D. James, was still writing about fairly wealthy people who lived in nice places. And I suppose it were people later like Ian Rankin and John Harvey who tackled more issues of social justice, of looking at problems that in society as they are now rather than as they were. And I learned quite a lot from those writers too.
Yeah. There are all of them. They are very good crime writers, of course. There are people who see crime fiction as not being real literature or being at the outskirts of literature. What do you say to someone who has this view?
I'd say that there are some fine crime writers who probably could be considered literary authors, but actually we don't care because we like who we are. We don't want to be pretentious. We all get on very well. Readers love us.
Yeah,
I think there might be maybe a bit of jealousy in there because we do sell very, very well. So
yes, and you are translated in very many languages.
That's right. Yeah, and
American authors.
I love reading literary fiction as well. I think we can enjoy all sorts of work. I think the sort of snobbishness around reading is quite dangerous, because I think it puts new readers off reading at all.
Yeah.
And it makes them, and I would hate anybody who's having a good time with a book to think that isn't a good book, because obviously it is for them. Yeah. And it's a bit like, I don't know, it's a bit like diet, isn't it? You know, there are times when you really want a challenge, you want something thought-provoking, but then there are times when really only chocolate cake will do.
Yeah.
I think we have to serve all those needs.
Yeah, of course. Yes, you're right. So speaking about translations, what do you feel about being translated in so many countries, languages, even such as one as Romania, which is very far away from
yeah, it is, but it's very far away from the Shetland Islands, but it's very exciting, and I love travel. And I still remember very fondly that time I came to Bucharest, and we did, was it Gaudeamus? I think we did a festival there, and
me too, yeah.
I met some Romanian writers, but more importantly, perhaps Romanian readers, and what's not to love about that possibility of travel and meeting, and just that sense that I suppose that we have a shared experience in the reading, even though it might be translated into a different language. And that thing about people coming together over a good book, and you can either do it within your community as part of a reading group, but we can do it internationally as well. And perhaps the good thing about COVID is that we are doing more of that. So in a way, it's more democratic, because people who can't afford to come to expensive book festivals or to travel to see their favorite author can catch up with them via Zoom or Crowdcast or one of the other.
Yeah. But don't you miss the book fairs, the book festivals, and everything that happened before this COVID?
I do, but it's starting to come back with us. So our rates are very stable. About 90% of adults have been vaccinated now. So we are getting out and doing things. We're trying to be cautious. So most of the events I've done in the last couple of weeks, because I've just got a new book out, have been in churches, because you can space out in churches, and I can stand at the front and be quite separate, or outside. So we've done a number of events in big tents, or even in village squares. It's a bit like going back to how we used to do things. So standing up in a village square and shouting at people has been quite fun too, if a bit chilly, a bit cold.
Yeah, interesting. We started with Cold Earth, which is the seventh book out of the total of 8 books of the Shetland series, the 2 quartets. I always wanted to ask you if this quartet arrangement of 8 books, was it something planned from the beginning, or there was a moment when you decided, well, I'll end this series, I'll do something else? How was it? Why did you end it? And when did you had this idea to stop it?
Well, as I explained, first of all, it was going to be a standalone novel. And then it sold better than anything else I'd written. So my editor came back and suggested that it might make a short series. So I thought a quartet, each with a different color in the title. And then after those 4, I still had things that I wanted to say about Shetland. So there are 4 more named after the elements. So, and that is it then. So Wildfire, the 4th book of that 2nd quartet, the 8th book, is the last of the Shetland books.
Because I think reading those books in the Shetland Quartet, it feels like it will last forever. There'll be more than 8.
No, that I think I wanted to stop before it got silly. You know, you don't want, in a population of 23,000, you don't want to kill off any more people, really.
Yeah.
So that was one reason, but also I wanted to stop while I was still really enjoying writing them. I didn't want to get bored. I didn't want to repeat story ideas. So, and before, more importantly, before the reader got bored.
Yeah. You received the Diamond Award of CWA. You are one of the very few writers who received it. And, well, it's an obvious question. What's your opinion? Would you rather be read by many people or receive literary awards? Which is the most important thing?
Oh, just being read is the most important thing. Meeting readers. The awards are lovely. And that one was particularly lovely because it was given to me by other writers. So it was given to me not by reviewers, newspaper reviewers, but other members of my profession who understand my craft. So that was very special. And it was a lovely evening and I was very glad to be there. But no, it's the readers that matter, isn't it? You want to meet your readers and get a sense that they're enjoying the books. And I suppose it's the people who say, your books got me through lockdown, or your books helped me after my husband died, or your books helped me when I was having a bad illness or I'd been in hospital. And those are the very moving stories that you hear from readers. And those are the important ones.
Of course. Your books may also make readers want to travel to Shetland. What's the best way to experience the islands?
I'm planning my trip because we haven't been able to travel there for nearly 2 years. So I will be going to Shetland in December to open a new library there. And I always go on the ferry. So I'll be getting the train up to Aberdeen and then making the little walk to the ferry terminal. I'll go onto the big ferry that goes up overnight to Shetland. It's 14 hours, it's a long way. And I have my cabin and I take seasick pills because it can be very rough. And I go to sleep and I wake up in Shetland. And that's the way to do it, I think. You can go on the plane, but I don't like small, noisy planes, especially if it's very windy. Because when you fly into Shetland, you come very, very low over the water. And even though I know that the airstrip is there, I'm still quite scared.
Yeah.
But
yes,
do go, it's beautiful. And lots of cruises call in there now. So that's a perhaps more comfortable way of doing it. But I would always go on the ferry. That you get a sense of the distance on the ferry. And when you wake up, you see the islands approaching. And you get that sense of excitement of a very different, exciting place.
I know that you started a new series after Shetland and Vera.
Yes.
Can you tell the readers a little bit about this new one?
Yeah, this series is set in North Devon, because as you know, Alex, place is very important for me. I grew up in North Devon, so it's a place that I know very well. And it's a place where tourists go. It's the next county up from Cornwall. It's a place of beaches and holiday cottages and small communities. But it took me a long time to decide to write about it because I thought it might be a bit too cozy for the sort of books that I enjoy reading and writing. But I went down and spent some time with a friend after my husband died very suddenly, and I wanted to run away from where we were living. I needed just some time away. I went and stayed with an old school friend, and just talking to her and about her background, because she grew up in quite an enclosed, tight evangelical church community. And there is in the West Country, there are a number of groups which I've called the Brethren. And it seemed to me that if you'd grown up within a church like that, not at all cruel or unkind, but very, very certain about your faith, and you hit your late teens, and as many of us do, you start to question your faith and question the beliefs of your parents. Then if you lost your faith, you would be cast out. You would be what they call unfellowshipped. And it seemed to me that someone who'd done that, the world would seem very chaotic after the certainties and the rules of the community. And that you might then join the police service and see that as a way of finding the community and family, the sense of duty and honor that you were missing, sense of redemption almost. And so that's how Matthew Venn was born. And that's who he is. He's grew up in this very tight religious community of the brethren. The book that I've been touring with recently is the second in the series. And the first one did very nicely and is being turned into television. So
This one also.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems that your writing attracts the TV series and so on. What do you think about this connection between your books and the TV series inspired by them? Do you like them? Do you, because they're not inspired by the TV series has more plots than the books usually.
Yeah, I think they are quite different, but they do absolutely capture the books in a way, because they capture the place, because they're filmed where the books are set, all three, and a kind of ethos or morality within the books, that kindness matters, that relationships matter, and I think they very much capture the central characters as well. They might not look like my characters, but they are very firmly my characters. And all three are made by the same production team, Silver Print. And I think, I think I've been very fortunate, because the first ones did very well. And so rather than take a chance on a new writer, they stick with me. But there are great directors, great cinematographers, great actors in the long call, the new series, just fantastic actors, people who very classy, who we know in the UK through their Shakespeare, through their theatre work, like Juliet Stevenson, Martin Shaw, Anita Dobson. And so I've just been very, very lucky with the quality of the work that's produced.
Good. Thank you very much.